Hi everyone, today I'm going to explain how changes in the total amount of goods and services produced in our economy, what we call aggregate supply, can lead to recessions. We'll see how a decrease in production can hurt the economy, and we'll use a well-known example to illustrate this. What is aggregate supply? Aggregate supply represents all the goods and services produced in an economy. In the short run, production can change when prices change because companies will be willing to produce more for higher prices. In the long run, however, the economy's production is fixed by factors like the number of workers, machines, and available technology. This diagram, known as the aggregate demand aggregate supply model, shows three important curves. The aggregate demand curve, which represents the total spending by households, businesses, and government in an economy, slopes downward, meaning that as prices fall, people buy more. The short-run aggregate supply curve is upward sloping, meaning that higher prices encourage businesses to produce more. Where this varies from a regular supply and demand curve is a third slope, which, as you can see, actually does not have a slope at all. In the long run, the economy's output is fixed by its resources and not the price. You can only produce as much as you have the resources for, no matter the price. So the aggregate supply is drawn as a vertical line. What happens when a factor that contributes to short-term supply decreases? For example, if the price of production increases. It would cause a shift to the left, and this means that for every price level, businesses now produce less output. As a result, the new short-run equilibrium is found at a higher price level and a lower level of output. This often leads to job losses and higher prices, which are key markers of a recession. Spending will also decline as households and firms face tighter budgets. During the 1973 oil crisis, prices of oil quadrupled, creating a soar in energy prices, which significantly increased production costs for many businesses. In our aggregate supply and demand model, this would be depicted by a shift to the left in aggregate supply, meaning less output and higher prices. The combination of falling production and rising prices contributed to an economic slowdown, which we recognize as a supply-side recession. When facing a supply-side recession, central banks might lower interest rates to boost spending, and governments can increase spending or cut taxes to stimulate economic activity. But if the problem is that companies can't make enough goods, these actions might not boost production. Instead, they could even push prices higher because the supply of goods stays low while spending increases. In summary, a leftward shift in short-run aggregate supply, often due to increases in production costs, reduces output and pushes prices up, leading to recession. The aggregate supply and demand model clearly shows how these dynamics unfold. The 1973 oil crisis is a prime example, and while monetary and fiscal policies can help, they must be used with caution to avoid worsening inflation. Thank you for watching.